So, Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria has officially been set. Now, initially, it was leaked for the Sphere card on the French broadcast for the UFC last weekend. Since then, I believe it's been confirmed that that's not true, and it's more likely to take place at UFC 307. But regardless, they're fighting, right? And this matchup is so interesting because you got Max Holloway, who is the self-proclaimed best boxer in the UFC, fighting Ilia Topuria, who has more or less put on a complete boxing clinic in every single MMA fight he's ever had ever. So, there's a very interesting question at hand here, and that is, who is the better boxer between the two? And the original plan I had for this video was that I was going to go through both of their fights. I was going to analyze their styles, we were going to look at all the intricate key details between them, and we were going to come to an educated answer about who is the better boxer between Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. But I'm not going to waste your guys' time on this one, alright? The answer is pretty simple. It's Ilia Topuria. I mean, Ilia Topuria is leagues ahead of Max Holloway in the boxing, and I don't think that's controversial to say. In fact, me personally, whenever people bring up who are the best boxers in the UFC, I've always excluded Max Holloway from this list. Not because he's not one of the best strikers. I mean, he really, really is, but he's not a pure boxer. At least not in the sense of guys like Ilia or guys like JDM. They are pretty much, they stick to boxing fundamentals when they fight. And Max Holloway just doesn't do that. His style is very unique to him. Ever since, I would say, the second Volkanovski fight, he stands kind of like a Thai fighter. He's got his hands up by his face, a very narrow stance, and what he is always looking to do, he wants to stay in your face and overwhelm you with volume and activity. And what makes this style so difficult to deal with for a lot of guys is, for one, defensively, Max always does an amazing job entering into range, landing a combination, and then sliding out of range just before you can land your counters cleanly. But even if you are fast enough to catch Max cleanly, he is so durable, his chin is just so strong, you can't hurt him, you can't put him away, and he just stays there and overwhelms you. The Jose Aldo fights are by far the best example of this, because you got Aldo, who has an insane amount of power and a really high ability to finish guys. He throws with everything he has in every single punch, and he was catching Max very cleanly. But it never hurt Holloway, it never deterred him. He just stayed right in his face, kept peppering him, and just broke him down. He just out-cardioed him. And for Max, it's a snowball effect. As fights go on, you just continuously get more screwed, because he's basically asking you to hit him. He's standing right in front of you. He sometimes overthrows on guys. He's landing these long combinations, and he's asking you, hit me. You try, he's sliding just out of range every single time. And when you do catch him, it doesn't rock him. He stays right in your face, and it is just progressively getting worse for you as time is going on. You're getting more and more tired, and he is just only picking up the pace. And it's a serious problem. But then you look at Ilia Topuria, and he fights like a boxer does. I mean, he has super tight defense. He stands bladed, a lot of weight on that front leg. And his head movement, his defense, it is fucking crazy. I mean, that's the only way I know how to put it. His shoulder rolls, the way he turns with punches is crazy, because you got Josh Emmett, who has an insane amount of power. If Josh Emmett lands on you cleanly, you are going to start seizuring in front of all your fans and friends, and the entire world, and anyone who's ever cared about you is going to see you lifeless on the ground, fucking shivering like Bryce Mitchell did. And you've got Topuria just every single time Emmett came in with a giant overhand. I mean, it was crazy to see. To me, the most impressive part of Ilia's game is just how he is never off balance. You look at Josh Emmett, who I mentioned prior. Now, he is by no means to the level of Michael Chandler when it comes to recklessly throwing overhands. But, because he relies so heavily on power, there are times he overthrows. He throws so hard he falls off balance, or he throws so hard and lunges in to a point where he's leaving himself open to get countered. But Ilia doesn't do this. His ability to counter counter off your shots, his ability to slip your jab and throw an overhand at the same time, knowing when to enter into range with body shots and then finish the combination upstairs. It's always perfect. He's never in a bad position, and he is constantly dangerous. I mean, he is just, with what he does, he is a master at it, in every sense of the word. Look, a lot of people like to make the claim that Volkanovski was not the same when he fought Ilia Topuria, given the fact that he was coming off a knockout loss to Ilia Topuria 4 months prior. In fact, Max Holloway is saying this himself. He goes, hey, if you think that's the same Volkanovski that I fought, you're crazy. And, I don't like Max saying this. I don't, because at the end of the day, Volk getting knocked out had nothing to do with the knockout prior. It just did. It didn't matter who you are. You get caught as cleanly as Volk did, right on the tip end of your chin, you are going to get knocked out. I mean, the fact of the matter was, Volkanovski, he was trying to avoid boxing Ilia Topuria, which, is a great strategy. At most, all he was doing was jabbing, kicking, and maybe throwing a right hand to try to catch Topuria as he was coming in. But he kept pulling out of the pocket with his chin right up in the air. He was doing that multiple times, and that is just an absolute recipe to get knocked out. And Ilia is so accurate. He caught him right on the button, and the knockout from Islam flies out the window at that point, right? Nobody is surviving that shot. So to me, I think if Max Holloway were to win this fight, which I think it's very, very possible for him to do, he really, really needs to avoid boxing with Topuria, right? I don't think he's going to be able to overwhelm him with pressure. Topuria has shown he can go 5 rounds in the Emmett fight. He spent that entire contest landing heavy shot after heavy shot after heavy shot and was still power double-legging him in the 5th round. So he should have the cardio to survive all 5 rounds. And like I said, Max's style, it's a snowball effect. He builds momentum as the fight goes on, and the way to counteract that is to interrupt him. This is what Volkanovski did brilliantly in almost all of his fights with Max. In the first fight, he used leg kicks to do it. In the second fight, Max really surprised him with the Muay Thai stance, so he had to wrestle. And then in the third fight, it was primarily with boxing, because he was just way quicker than Holloway was. So Ilia, in pure boxing, needs to find a way to be interrupting Max and to prevent him from getting his game going. Well, as we've seen in the past, Max struggles with guys who are really high level with counters. You look at the Dustin Poirier fight, and of course there's going to be some big asterisks there given the fact that Max moved up on short notice. He wasn't a full-size 55er, and we've seen Max as a full-size 55er, and that's a real problem. But at the end of the day, counters are counters, and that is what Dustin's specialty is. When Dustin fought Conor McGregor, he was doing an amazing job finding counters. That's how he knocked out Benoit Saint-Denis, and that is what he was doing to Max. Max was trying to stay in his face, peppering him, and Dustin's counters were just too high level. He kept catching Max in the middle of his combinations, and Max he struggled overwhelming him. And that is what Ilia Topuria is so ungodly good at doing. His counters are so goddamn high level. And in a boxing match, I hate to say it, but Ilia Topuria is just far better than Max Holloway. Alright? Now, am I saying that I think Ilia Topuria is going to win this fight? No, I think this fight is very, very winnable for Max Holloway. But at the end of the day, Max Holloway is not the best boxer in the UFC. He's not. Ilia Topuria is. And I think Max is going to run into some real problems if he tries to box with Ilia. I'm just being honest. He needs to mix it up. As I've said in the past, the way to beat the boxing style is to not box. All right? This is exactly what Leon Edwards did to Kamaru Usman. Now, look, Usman is not the boxer Ilia Topuria is, but still, offensively, he relied very heavily on the boxing. So what did Leon Edwards do? Stayed on the outside, really good movement, never allowed himself to get backed into a corner, and he threw a ton of kicks. A ton of kicks. He did everything he could to avoid boxing in the pocket. That is what Volkanovski attempted to do against Ilia Topuria, and he couldn't quite get it done. I think Max Holloway can replicate that style, and it'll be very interesting to see, but to me, the answer is very simple. Ilia Topuria is the best boxer in the UFC, and Max needs to do whatever he can to avoid boxing in this fight.